Hey Sam,
Sam,
how
how
are
are you?
you?
Can you hear me?
I don't even know how to. Yeah, I can hear you. I was pausing because I don't. Hi, Halima. I don't even know how to answer that question these days.
Mm,
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a
it
lot.
is.
And you as a healer are doing some incredibly important work that I like have just been binging your videos and sending them to people, and I am so excited to learn from you. But tell me how your heart is, how you're doing, how work has been doing right now, because I can't imagine how overwhelmed you must feel with everything that's happening.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate you. I appreciate you caring about
Thank you.
because I think this stuff is arguably your health and your wellness is the most important thing in your life because without it, you are not. So, thank you for championing work. And hi, everybody. So to answer your question, yeah, honestly, since the pandemic started, it's been really like intense just in terms of like pickup, just in terms of like people now focusing, well, at that time, focusing very specifically on their physical health and their immunity. And then now, as things are, especially in certain communities, starting to get a little bit more stressful, um, paying attention to their mental and emotional health. And so I like teach this program and I work with a lot of people privately. So like that definitely has been like a theme. So I'm on the clock, but it's really important to take care of myself. And, I think the best, how I feel right now is really grounded. But I'm doing that because I have actual practices in place to like get me to that state. Otherwise that anchor me there. Otherwise, if I weren't doing those things or if I hadn't evolved the way that I did, I don't think I'd be able to take on the responsibilities that I take on today.
Totally. How long do you think it really took you to kind of solidify your routine or whatever it is that you need to do so that you can get to that place of being grounded? Because I feel like especially in times, I think in times of turmoil like we're feeling right now and so many of it, and it's not even just the pandemic and the civil rights movement, but it's also, and like, I'm sure you feel this. I know so many people feel this, but the energy right now is just so raw and sensitive, and there's so, like, I don't even have words to explain like what it's been like going through so many things right now, like even in my personal life and just seeing so many people that we love in pain. It's just so much. So how, my question to you is like, did you come up with this pre all of this, and how does one begin to find ways to remain grounded in times of turbulence?
That's a great question. So let me take a step back and tell people like why. To answer that question, I have to explain a little bit about like my background and like how I got to this. So I didn't choose wellness. Like wellness chose me. Like I didn't choose this life. You know what I mean? Like life chose me kind of thing. And that's really true because in 2015, in July of 2015, I got diagnosed with, or I didn't get diagnosed at that time, but I started experiencing my first symptom, which would later become a very chronic, debilitating autoimmune disease. And the first symptom really took me by surprise. It was extremely severe. I lost half of my hair in one day, and then it started snowballing in a bunch of different symptoms like skin issues, muscle spasms, yeah, like chronic fatigue, just a bunch of chronic symptoms, a laundry list. And I had no idea what was happening with my body. And I went through this journey with myself where I was like seeing doctors, specialists 3 to 4 times a week, every single week. And everybody was punting me to the next person, and there were no answers. And I just felt extremely frustrated because at some point you give up hope and you start to give your power away and you start to get consumed by fear and stress because it becomes a question of like whether or not you're going to make it or not, and so
Yeah.
um, yeah, and so like my social life like was non-existent. Like I was just I was constantly, I like was clinically depressed. Like I was constantly in a state where I was just low, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that happened for like over a year and a half ish. And finally, I started, like looking at other alternative ways to heal. I was looking at plant medicine, I was looking at herbalism, I was looking at just a
How did
shift.
that start? What was your entry point? Was it out of desperation because nobody had answers for you, or was there something that came up that tried to guide you towards that direction?
So it's a combination of both. I'm like really transparent about like what like my mental health at that time. Like it was very, very, very dark. I was in a very, very dark place. And um I tried. I actually like tried to like not, I didn't want to be here on earth anymore. You know what I mean? And I tried I attempted to do that. And, somebody who I believe was an angel ended up saving me. And then I was like, okay, well, if I'm trying to do this and that's not working, nobody has any answers for me, and I'm taking all this medication and I'm not getting any better, like what options do I have? And so I was really like
Yeah.
pushed to just explore. And in the beginning, I would have thought it was like ludicrous, but I was
Yeah.
pushed to explore other options. So, um, my first entry point, so I had a homegirl of mine, and this was like in April of the following year, and she was like, well, I know this guy named Dr. Sebi, and he's a really good friend of mine, and this and that. And I don't know if she might be on here. Her name is Roseanne. Shout out to Roseanne. But she was like, he was a really good friend of hers, and I was like looking at her like, this girl's wilding, like healing the body through plants, like okay. And then like a few months later, I was like, I kind of just like I kept it in the back burner of my mind, and uh like a few months later, I was like, I kind of just like flirted with the idea a little bit, and then I just started doing my own research. Um,
Well,
Shout
let
out.
me let me actually ask a question about that, because I'm following you, and I've had not a similar experience to what you went through, but my entry point into the interest of like plant medicine and wellness and all of that. And anytime you aren't as familiar and then you get started with this, it always comes from a place of like disclosing, I know this sounds woo woo, or I know this sounds weird, or I know it's hard to believe, but like we've been here on planet Earth for however many years, and we know that cures and medicine for every single disease exists within the earth. So what is it that has like given us this sense of I just don't trust that I can heal from the things that the ground is giving you?
Because that's not what we're marketed. That's not what there are millions and millions of dollars that are poured into propaganda every single year, to convince us that the solution for a lot of things is anything but ourselves. And
Yeah,
it's
that's so true. That's so true.
Yeah, and it's like if you look at like our great grandparents, take your ancestors, like go six ancestors back. Like there's this knowledge, there's this human knowledge. We came with the earth, I fully believe, came with the earth packaged with all of the essential raw nutrients,
One.
yeah, and minerals that our bodies need in order to nourish themselves, replenish, grow. And the way that we live right now is extremely abnormal. So I think, just to kind of, I think it's so the World Health Organization said that stress is the epidemic of the 21st century. And I actually couldn't agree more, because I think that there are two things that are happening here at the same time. The first is that we're very disconnected from the earth. The way that we're eating is not actually serving and servicing our bodies in the way that it was intended. And then on the other hand, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, the parts of us that we feel like are abstract, that is extremely deregulated, and it's extremely disconnected from oneness, wholeness, and groundedness, which at one point in time, humans, our ancestors, like hundreds of years back weren't concerned with stress and processed foods. You know what I mean? Like they were arguably
Right.
healthy because they were closer to um, the actual natural state of being. So I think like,
And I also feel
yeah,
like, and I would love to know your thoughts on this because the World Health Organization is saying that the biggest epidemic of the 21st century is stress. What what confuses me, or rather infuriates me, is that we know that, and everybody goes through it. Yet we don't prioritize learning how to manage it and how to use stress to our advantage and how to protect our bodies from the physical reaction of suppressing feelings, of just keeping things like not letting our sorry about that letting ourselves feel our feelings all the way through, or go through the experience that our bodies need to go through to relieve stress. And so we know that this is a problem, but yet we still like are just pressed on having to just move through it without actually like
yeah.
releasing it. Does that
I
make
think
sense?
with stress, so the thing is like, okay, we're like stress. Oh, we need to learn how to manage stress better. But like, what does that even mean? So just like going back to to my story real quick, like when I ultimately went on this journey and I healed myself physically, I started to look at, like, I zeroed in on like, why did I get sick? Like, actually, why did I get sick? And I was like, I traced back. Okay, so yeah, July
Wow.
2015 is when had my first symptom. And I go 5 months back before that in February of 2015. I went through something really traumatic, something extremely stressful. And then my stress response from February of 2015 through July of 2015, I didn't regulate my stress. I was just constantly in a place of lowness. And I didn't understand how to navigate that journey. And it literally is like putting my body through 5 consecutive months of high stress, which is chronic degeneration of the body, right? And degradation of my bodily tissue. So how could it made me a perfect candidate for an illness? Like, how could I not? And so I started looking more into stress. And I think the biggest
Wow.
thing, learning your relationship with stress, learning your relationship, because all of us have a relationship with it. Why? Because I think from jump we're conditioned to dealing with issues and problems and life in a very dysfunctional way. Like one of my favorite neuroscientists and geneticists and quantum physicists on this topic, his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he says that he's like, there's something called your personality and your personal reality, right? So there's your internal environment and your external environment. And a healthy person, no matter what the external environment looks like, internally they're able to bring their place in their body and curate their internal environment to a place of regulation and a place of clarity, or like just able to understand how to deal with the external environment and not drag your body through inflammation. Now, the opposite and the flip of that, which is where most of us stand, our internal environment gets consumed as well, dragged along with whatever happens in our external environment. And so then, when you keep that cycle up, not only do you program yourself deeper in your ability or your inability to deal with stress, but also in creating inflammation in the body, and then leading to a bunch of symptoms or illnesses down the line. So I think, to answer your question, like, or to what you were saying, like, the number one thing for like stress is understanding your relationship with it. It's a journey, it's a process, but also what you're essentially doing is, you have to understand that there are certain programs, thought patterns, behaviors that we all embody that are not conducive to healing and not sustainable. And in order for you to get to a place where you're truly thriving, you have to shift into a new state of being. It's not just enough to manage stress. It's understanding that life is going to be life and throw things at you, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with that by unlearning what you've learned on how to deal with stress, but also learning how to regulate your body so your body doesn't get dragged along through this ride.
Wow. So regulating our okay. So before we get into regulating our body, this was a tangent in the middle of your story. So you were dealing with mental health and with the illness, and you were looking into all of the alternative types of medicine. And so how did we get to where you are today?
So I changed. So first of all, I changed my diet. I yeah,
Which,
I changed my diet. I did not. I was like one of those people that was like, "Oh, you're eating vegetables or you're eating green things." I was the one laughing at, making fun of people, and my have the tables turned. But you know, I'm predominantly plant based. But I had to have a major, like, it was a major just wake up call in my life. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's how a lot of us learn, unfortunately. But it's okay. We're grateful for where we are right now. But I had like I had a shift in everything it is that I am. Like, I literally, everything it is that I am has changed. Like, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. Um, I changed the way I ate. I changed my relationship with food. I started looking at things that came from the ground and things that were given to us by the All High as things that were meant to, that are complementary to us and meant to give us nourishment. I started eating for nourishment and I felt more nourished. I was reducing the toxicity as much as possible in my life, emotionally, mentally, physically. I curated the energy around me. I learned what my traumas were, what my triggers were, what series of beliefs and thought patterns and decisions got me to a place where I wasn't honoring myself in my body, and where I was allowing the external environment to consume me. Like, where
mm,
and what part of my life did I give my power away as an agent of free will and an independent thinker and a consciousness? What part
wow.
of my life did I give up? When did I give up my power?
How does one go about answering that question though? Because what does it mean? I think that before we can ask ourselves, not you, but like the rest of us who are learning from you right now, can ask ourselves, what point in my life did I give my power away? We have to recognize what our power was to begin with and what it would look like, what an example of that would look like to give it away. Because I think oftentimes most people go about their lives assuming that they have total free will and that they are in control. But I totally align with you, and I think that throughout our lives, especially like as young people who are really impressionable and you're struggling, you're going through things, you are giving away bits and pieces of your freedom and the way you think. And I mean, I always think about if we actually are independent thinkers, like if we are in a position where we are thinking for ourselves and we know that. So what does it mean to ask
I think
oneself
one of the
that question?
greatest questions you can ask yourself now is just like, if you took away everything in your life, if you took away your money, if you took away your home, if you took away your career, if you took away your physical appearance, and everything, all of those things that you know that are known things to in your life, if you took those away, who would you be? Like, what would you be? And that's you. That's your power. You as pure consciousness, you know. And so there are a lot of ways in which we've either our power
Mm,
willingly or subconsciously, or where we were in, like, there were some programs that were installed within us, right? So if you're looking at the latter part, so sometimes you can grow up in a household or in an environment as a child where physically your brainwave states are actually slower. They're in theta as opposed to an adult, which is in beta. But your brainwave states are in theta and you're more impressionable as a child. And so if somebody in your childhood tells you you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not beautiful enough, you know, that's a program that makes it right into your cerebellum and it sticks there. And so anytime you hear it over the next few years, as your analytical brain is forming, it just reinforces those thought patterns. And so then at a certain age later on, when you're like, wow, I need to start to heal, because where did this program come from? Where did this belief pattern come from? You have to, there's a lot of like repair your child that has to happen.
Totally.
There's a lot of going into things that you may or may not remember, and just there's this whole field called energy psychology right now, where they slow your brain waves down, and then they like, you can drop a new program in to like to reinforce something, like a new way of thinking, which is it's a tangent, but
A whole conversation. I'm so curious about
yeah,
that. We're gonna
yeah,
have
we
to
do.
talk
It's
about it at some
really,
point.
really cool. Um, but then you're looking at like, okay, so say something, it was say in the former example of like where you willingly gave up your power. Like something that I can think of that's really easy is like relationships, right? Sometimes we are, whether they're platonic, like a friendship, or a relationship like a like a romantic relationship, whatever it is, you can be in this interaction or experience with somebody, and what ends up happening is uh because you're not necessarily doing the inner work before you enter something like this, you're moving in as your old self, with the attachments. Maybe you're in the relationship for the wrong reasons. Maybe you were taught wrong, or not wrong, but unhealthy programs or ideas about love and how you should be treated, or how you shouldn't be treated. And then your old programming and conditioning allows you to remain attached, or attract and attach a situation that could potentially be toxic. And then for fear, fear is a huge agent of giving your power away. Sometimes fear of losing somebody, or losing something, or fear of
Yeah.
anything really could allow you to be like, man, let me contract, let me make myself smaller, and stay being treated, or stay being dealt with in situations that don't fully honor me. But you're not thinking about that. Even something as simple as like noticing red flags that are problematic, and then you just hushing them. That's like slowly, bit by bit, you're chipping away at giving your power away. And then ultimately you get to a place where you're like, there's nothing for you to stand on, because you haven't been honoring yourself, and saying, hey, this doesn't really agree with like, any type of relationship, even if it's a friendship. You know what I mean? I need you. If you're gonna be my friend, if we're in a relationship with one another, then I'm going to honor you in the way that I like to be honored, and vice versa. And if there's any like deviation from that, then we're gonna have to like assess, because anything in my life has to be recognizing like my worth, including me, but you first and foremost. So there are lots of different ways that power has been taken away, or that we've given it up. But the beautiful thing is that you can always reclaim it, and that in of itself is a journey.
Well, I mean, I like was smiling really big because these are things that I've been thinking about a lot, especially the reparenting your inner child. I was just having a conversation in the car yesterday with my husband about the fact that, because I always say the people like that I think carry the bulk of wisdom are really young kids and really old people, and those are the people that I love to like spend a lot of time with to learn from. And the inner child part is like that kid, that 7-year-old version of you, or whatever age it is, that still exists inside of you, and your body is still will forever work in protecting that kid. And we've internalized things out of like fight or flight, or just like defense mechanisms to protect that child, that have and then never gotten rid of that, the residue that has existed in our bodies because of that. So I mean, we're talking about cultivating wellness in our physical body. So my question to you is this where you have to start? Like, is there ever an option where you can work on trying to um, repair your physical body and then get to the mental and emotional stuff, or does it have to start from
So
inside?
honestly, I think any entry point to wellness is a valid entry point. You know what I mean? And it's not like, what is the formula, or what is the protocol. There's no, you know what I mean?
Right. But we all, as
Right,
humans,
right.
we
And
want
you know what? And I
formulas.
understand that. Like we love structure. We like how we like things to be broken down to us in like steps. We can there we can do that. Generally, that's like what I teach through in my program. But like going literally like bit by bit and learning information. I think just to answer your question, uh you know, any entry point to wellness is a fantastic entry point. So if you are saying, my entry point to wellness was through fear, you know what I mean? Like through actually through despair. That was my entry point to wellness. But like ultimately I ended up changing the way that I care for myself comes from a place of love
Right.
now, not from a place of fear of like dying or fear of collapsing. But uh if you want to start with food, that's great. That's a great way of honoring yourself. You know what I mean? Like if you want to say, like, I'm going to commit to eating more dark leafy greens or giving my body more of the types of nutrients that it needs. Or look, I know I've been impacted by stress in a very big way. I know my adrenal glands are fatigued. You know what I mean? I know that they're wiped out. So let me focus on the next month on giving my body foods and herbs that are known to replenish the adrenal gland. Like that's a great thing. You know, it's going to need that help. You know, it's a beautiful thing. Just if you're saying like, okay, I'm somebody who, you know, I'm just entering this journey and I'm trying to figure out like what I should do. Like even if you focus on the aspect of sleep, you know what I mean? Like improving your sleep every night. Like whatever steps, small steps you can take towards wellness are valid and amazing steps, and physical steps are great steps. The thing is I always teach this, but like physical without the emotional and the spiritual and the mental is not, it's like missing the mark. Why? Because there's this whole field of science now called epigenetics, and epi means above, genetics is the study of genes. And it's literally like just understanding neurochemically what your brain does when you think of certain thoughts, or when you have certain emotions in certain scenarios of like fear or anxiety, or sadness or anger or shame or guilt, or frustration. What happens neurochemically, and then what happens to your nervous system and your organs and your genes, more importantly, is that your genes actually get a chemical signal that from your brain based off of how you're reacting to your environment, to either downregulate or upregulate. So if you think about downregulation of a gene means causing disease and increasing the inflammatory response of your hyperarousal state.
Uh,
Upregulating a gene means to create more healing, and to activate genes in a different way. So there's literally a whole science called epigenetics, which I love, where it shows that like no matter, even if you're giving your body the raw materials, which is beautiful, if you're not actually working on yourself in terms of evolving and shifting everything it is that you are into a new state of being that is more conducive to healing, then you're constantly sending this stress chemical and signals to your genetic programming to tell your genes that it's not a time to grow, it's not a time to repair, it's not a time to heal, it's a time to remain afraid. There's a danger outside in our external environment. We need emergency chemicals. We need to be wiped out, drawn out, stressed out, and we need to live this way. And it's like, then how long are we doing this for? Is it sustainable? You know what I mean? Like, so there's no talk of physical healing without eventually addressing like that.
wow. I mean, when you say that, like, how long are we going to do that for? I feel like many people live their entire lives doing that. Like once that starts, it becomes just how you are. Because I mean, the concept of healing in general, internally, physically, all these things, is one that you have like you have to want that for you, and you have to be open to the
Yes.
concept of how to do it. And going back to what you said in the very beginning of why are we always so turned off by plant medicine or alternative medicine or a holistic approach to healing, and it's because we've never been marketed that. And there are so many powers at play, whether it be pharmaceutical companies, whether it be government policy, whatever it is. There's so many things at play. And so it's it takes almost like living proof like you to say to, you know, thank you for being so vulnerable and opening up about what rock bottom looked like for you, which was literally the bottom, and then being able to come to a place where now you are helping others heal themselves. And I one of your posts was talking about how you can heal chronic illness. And I personally know so many people who have various chronic illnesses, and the idea of that not, like the idea of it not being forever is not something that is typically talked about. It's more of like, how can we placate it, and how can we just, you know, accept, I mean, of course you have to accept things, but accept it, and then accept that that's going to be a part of your life forever. And you know, I don't have an answer to like what are the exact steps that the world needs to take to be able to be more open to these things. But what is the most common fear that you see in others when it comes to facing the full holistic approach to healing?
There are a lot of fears. One of them is not believing that they're worthy. That's like when I like dig and dig and dig, that's what I find. So I teach a program with uh, hundreds of students, and the goal of the program is like healing your body from chronic illness, chronic symptoms. It doesn't have, you don't have to have a diagnosed illness, or it could just be curiosity as to how to heal, right? Like how to take care of my body. You know, you don't have to have an illness to be as a part of this, but before my students enter my class, before I do a round of my class, I have them fill out a questionnaire. And in the questionnaire, they think they're going in and they're going to do like a cleanse, like they're going to do like a juicing regime, but it's like, I'm like, oh, you're about to change that you are.
It's that structure. It's
yeah,
that
and
list that
I'm like, well,
wants.
you know, we're going to learn about food and herbs, and we're going to learn about how that helps your body, but we're there. In order to be successful at this, you're going to have to change. You're going to literally have to neurochemically, hormonally, genetically become a different person, or a more evolved version of yourself. You're going to have to learn to evolve into this emotional being, into this human that knows how to tap into consciousness, that knows how to understand how your external environment does not have to consume your internal environment, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I look at this questionnaire, and I have a physical part of the questionnaire. What are your symptoms, the pain level, da, da, da. And then we go into like the second part, which is like understanding like what is going on in their lives. You know what I mean? So it's the big one of the here are some of the fears that I'll read out to you. I'm not worthy enough, or they received a diagnosis or prognosis from a doctor or somebody who told them like, you only have 5 months to live, right? And so then they've accepted that as a belief pattern. Or the fear, so for example, somebody who's dealing with alopecia or dealing with eczema, or has dealt with that their entire lives or for such a long time and had to hide it, has had it programmed and be such a part of them, they can't even imagine themselves without that illness. For some people, how they can see others and they say that like, wow, that's beautiful, but maybe that doesn't apply to me because maybe I'm not consistent enough. Maybe I don't have a good relationship with discipline. Every time I try to put my mind to something, I'm not good at it. I'm not good at doing things. You know what I mean? And like I don't see projects through. And so you're like, okay, well then let's stop there. What I teach is literally breaking down consistency. Why aren't you at a place where you get your habits to match your intentions, to get your actions to match your intentions? Where does that come from? Like, where does consistency come from? And it comes from neuro going on in here, and like,
Wow.
and to heal that is another process. But you know, there's just fear. It's fear written everywhere, and I think, you know, just the biggest way to change this, and is something that you're doing now, it's storytelling. You know what I mean? It's storytelling in terms of like, if for tons of years millions of dollars were poured in to tell us that we needed an external source, that
Yep.
would heal us, instead of the fitra that we've been given, or sorry, to translate to everybody, instead of like the natural state of being and the natural things in the earth and energetically in the quantum field that we've been given. um, that process is the great unlearning. The way that we unlearn that is through by people like you and I and whatever, being vulnerable about what we went through and saying, hey guys, please consider that there could be another way. That there could be another way. And look, nobody's trying to enforce anything on anyone. You can do this if you want to. What you end up doing is a choice for you. But if you are curious, if you get to a place where there's some voice inside of you that says, I think there's something else out there, lean into that voice. And I always tell my students, like, as I see them heal, like physically, I see their symptoms are going away. They're evolving into new beings. They're creating new possibilities in their lives. I'm like, tell your families, tell your friends, tell your communities, tell people on the internet what types of changes you're going through, because when you do, other people are like able to see themselves in you.
But yes to all of that. And thank you for all of that. When it comes to sharing that with friends and family, and I've had this realization in the last week, I've realized, and it sounds naive to say this, that even when you go through that journey or that process, you really do have to meet people where they're at, because people are not always open. Yeah. They're like to this and to just healing in general, and so
yeah,
it can be taken the wrong way. It can be muted out. It can be, so I struggle with, like, how do you have these conversations knowing that people are not there yet, and it's like it's not going to be as exciting, it's not going to be as intriguing, and is the right thing to do to just test out the curiosity, like put it out there, test out the curiosity of people, and then move forward with conversations with people who are more open to it? And if not, like, what do you do when it's, family members or loved ones who need this more than anyone, but culturally ingrained in them, it is so hard to just be open or curious about this, because things have always been a type of way.
So, I come from a culture that literally embodies everything that you just said. And, it's like things that have to be kept on a hush, or like, you're crazy for saying this stuff. And you know what? When I first came out saying the things that I did, a lot of people thought I was crazy. You know what I mean? And but like, a lot of people thought I was just like wild. Like, what are you talking about? Like, like, or just I've met so many people who were like closed off. I think understanding, one, it's not a campaign that you're trying to run, right? Like, you don't have to actively like door knock or campaign to like persuade people to care about themselves or to be open to possibilities that are beyond their horizons. Their journey towards openness and just consideration of all things is their journey. And there's nothing that you can actually say or do that will force somebody to think or feel differently. That's their journey that they have to go on. The second thing is that everybody that is meant to gravitate towards this will gravitate at one point or another. Like, for me, like, I'm not out here like in certain circles being like, hey guys, wellness, da da da. But it's like, people are naturally, things happen to them in so many different ways over time, that in the beginning, if they're not open to it, they become more open to it because life pressures them to become more open to it, or shifts their perspective to become more open or a little bit more curious, and that in of itself becomes like a snowball effect. But whoever is meant to gravitate towards this will come. Your job is to first take care of yourself. That's the first thing. Like, make sure that you are well, taking care of yourself. Now, I understand if you have somebody who you dearly love and know that they could benefit a lot, right? Because we don't ever want to be coming from a place of entitlement, like, I think that you would benefit from this, because like that's not operating from humility. We could not be right. Like,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like, who's to know that who's right and who's wrong? But we're coming from a place of humility and saying, look, I don't have all the answers, but I love you and I care about you, and I would love for you to consider this. And when you this happened with my own mother, right? Like my own mom um has been dealing with chronic illness for years, like for over 12 years. And I remember when I healed myself, like in the beginning when I told her I was sick, she said it was like a bunch of it. She was like, well, you know, it's a bunch of reasons that had probably maybe nothing to do with what I was dealing with or whatever. But and I love my mom, but when I, you know, when I healed myself and I came back home, I was like, I was looking at her struggle on so many levels, and I was just like, try doing this and try doing that. So I would like, you know, I would stay home for like a week or 2 weeks at a time, and like in that time we would change our diet, and we would do just a bunch of things together, and then like as soon as I would leave Chicago, which is where my parents are from, as soon as I would leave, she would kind of go back into her old habits. And it took of like, you know, it one
Mm,
her, I think, seeing me and how I've evolved is inspiring. As a parent, as somebody who loves you, they see you, they knew you in like your, you know, BC times, and now they're seeing you physically, emotionally, spiritually.
I
Like
know.
that in of itself is some like testimony. And then when you're like, okay, I'm not gonna say, you just
Right.
watch this, or like you know, watch this video, or like learn about this person's story, you know what I mean? There are sometimes certain perspectives open up during those times, or even when you plant a seed in the beginning of like, consider being open to all things. That seed, don't underestimate over time. Sometimes it's a matter of time, of like, you know, when they're going to be accepting. But also, you know, just knowing that like you're not the one that's responsible for that, but you can hold space for the journey of that person. And I think never underestimate the power of prayer. You know, we're all so connected in energetic quantum ways. So
Mm,
I think you know, praying for just clarity and guidance and openness is so powerful.
that meant so much to hear. And I love that so much. And thank you for sharing that about your mom. I know so many people can relate to that, and so many people can relate to the like just culture, the multitude of cultural identities that exist within us, so that like, I don't know, there's like a time that we learn or we realize that even the people that
Mm-hmm.
who raise us and the people who love us, like there's so much that they can also learn. Like they've like given us the tools and the foundation to be who we are, and to cultivate knowledge and to grow, but also like everybody wants the younger generation to be better. And it's funny because I was just on a call about a report about Gen Z, and it was saying that majority of Gen Z um, like feels like they're also helping parent their parents, like they're also teaching them about technology, teaching them about healing, teaching them about mental health. And so we're in a really lucky position where we get to have
Yeah.
conversations like this and learn about it, and then realize that the struggle is like something uh it's like a collective struggle, and so many people are going through it, but it's also a collective healing. And so many of us can like have these conversations and just be more open. Like there's just never been a time in our lifetime that people have been this open to it. And I think, you know, now that I think about it, an entry point too is that I was thinking like my grandmother would love this conversation, because my grandmother, since I was little, has always like used herbs and and plants, and olive oil, which is just like key for everything. Like I remember I'd have like an ear infection, and she'd be like olive oil, or I'd have like congestion, and she'd be like olive oil. And it's funny because like even she's going on a healing journey right now, and she is working with like a Chinese doctor, and she is um, focusing on gratitude and doing yoga and doing these things. And I like, it makes me so emotional to even think about, because it's never too
Yeah.
late to start that. And there's so many times where you hear, you know, our parents or our grandparents say like, you know, I'm X age and I'm just, this is just how it's going to be forever. Like, but it just doesn't have to be. And we don't, and we just put ourselves in this box that I guess it goes back to the fear when I asked you, what is it that people are afraid of? And it's just like, that they're not worthy of healing. And I feel like that's a layer of that, like saying I'm already this age, so there's nothing to be done. And it's just like, no, like even at this age, you are so worthy and you deserving
Yeah,
of
you know,
full
you
healing.
can actually you can feel not worthy of something by actively not feeling worthy of it. You know, like if you're not actively being like, I'm worthy of this healing, you're taking a passive stand, a complicit stand towards that. And the message is like, what are, you know, are you actually worthy of this? Like, because if you felt that way, if you truly felt that way and you put your energy and your intention behind it, then that's what you would do. And I think, like, to go off what you're saying, yeah, like the older generation, you know, I work with people who are 60, who are 70, and they've been able to do miraculous things to their bodies because they're open. They open. They're like, you know what? Maybe I've lived 6 decades.
Yeah.
Maybe I've lived 5 decades. Maybe I've been wired and programmed a certain way, but I love myself and I want to be open to new information, new possibilities, new change. And I think when you even position it like that, people start to open up like, wow, like somebody 2 times, 3 times my age is speaking in this way. Like that's inspiring to me. And you're right. Like this generation, honestly, like when I look at the older generation, I have so much empathy and compassion because they did what they could. You know what I mean? Like when sometimes look at parents or grandparents as like not people. You know what I mean? Like what would you have done if you were in the same situations? You know, they did with what they could, whatever survival tactics or techniques or whatever pain they endured, whatever things they still project is because they haven't actively done the work to deal with their pain. And so like, yes, the younger generation now is understanding like, hey, there's like this weird disconnect. This is not how I want to live my life. And like becoming more aware and also teaching. And the ones that are generally, the more open you are, the more you're in a state of receivership, because the more closed off you are, the more you're not anything to enter through.
Yeah. That's so true. That is so true. Thank you so much. And I know we didn't get to regulating our nervous system, but this was the best intro I could have ever asked for. So I hope that we can
Yeah.
like continue this conversation because I want to make sure that you're able to like talk about all of the things that that you have seen that today is just so important for us to know. But this is so much for us to sit with, to share with, to learn from. So I wanted to say thank you so much, and you're just so appreciated. How can we support you in
Oh,
your
thank you
work?
so much, Noor. I really appreciated being on here. It's just so beautiful. You know, I've read in the comments, so many people are like, I feel affirmed. I feel, you know, this is really relatable. This is speaking to me. Like, I hope, yeah, I hope you guys feel seen and
Yes.
heard. You know, um, supporting my work would just be supporting yourself. You know, like that's what it is. Like, I do what I do, you know, in God's name, to serve God, to serve humanity, to just understand that like whatever, you know, because when I was healed through the grace and do carry out with my life, but I was like, I'm gonna be held accountable one day, because I figured out a way to not suffer
Yeah.
emotionally, mentally, and physically. And did I share that? Like, did I share, or did I withhold that information? Because this information is not mine. You know what I mean? It comes from a different source. Like, what did I do? And
Yeah.
so, you know, supporting my work would be supporting yourselves. If you're looking of like ways to find me on social media, that's my handle right there, AALA official. And then my platform, huh? Yes, I have another
And you
account
have
for
another
aalaCare.
account, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
have
like
aalaCare.
my take on healthcare, like, you know, Obamacare or whatever, like aalaCare, which emphasizes, yeah, that
I
modern
love it.
medicine exclude all the things that modern medicine exclude when they're considering healing. But in that, I have a program for anybody who wants to join or needs it. But otherwise, it's just, you know, engaging and literally just living your life out loud and taking up space and honoring yourself and becoming more open. That's how you support not my work, it's your work, it's all of our work. But thank you so much for having me on here, and thank you, everybody. Uh, yeah.
Thank you. You share a very similar energy to one of my favorite people and one of our mutual friends, and it gives me so much joy to see you talk like this. So I love you, and I'm sending you so much love and so much goodness.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you so
you.
much,
And
Ella.
yes, I love that that mutual energy and that source of joy in my life. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Talk
Sam,
to you soon.
Sam.
Assalamualaikum. Ah, that was so needed, and I go learn from Ella. If you, her handle is AALA official, and then she has another one called aalaCare, which is her take on healthcare, which is what she said. And if you feel inclined to join her program, reach out to her. And I hope that you get a chance to share this video with others because I think we all need this. Tomorrow's episode of AYS Hour is going to be on solidarity with non-Black people of color, and we're going to be talking to someone from the Muslim Anti-Racism Coalition. So make sure you tune in 12 p.m. tomorrow, inshallah.